Hello, everyone. We are going to wait, I think, just one more minute to give people the opportunity to log on, and then we will begin. I think we'll start. Hello, welcome to the first Lunch and Learn meeting presented by the Charlottesville Police Foundation and the Charlottesville Police Department. We are very excited to begin this series and are honored that you're joining us today. My name is Gail Milligan. I'm the Executive Director of the Foundation. We are deeply appreciative of the Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy who are facilitating this Zoom call for us today. Thank you, Millie and Katie. The Lunch and Learn series is one of the outcomes of our engagement in the community earlier this year and is part of our core mission to inform and connect. In each session, members of the CPD will offer unique insight to the work of the department and what it does, and answer questions you have about that work. Before we begin, I wanted to share a brief overview of our work at CPF. Simply stated, Charlottesville Police Foundation serves the community by serving the police. We seek to improve the quality of life in Charlottesville by offering a community partner for our police department. The foundation promotes excellence in police services by investing in programs that enhance our department and yet are beyond the reasonable reach of the city's budget. We reward excellence by celebrating the successes of our department and the skills of its officers. And we strengthen the connections between the department and the public through outreach programs and community events. The newest example is this Lunch and Learn series. Best examples of the diverse support we provide include housing grants to officers so that they can live in the community they serve, an awards dinner and an Officer of the Month program, advanced training for officers, grants for specific needs like the K-9 program, technology, and programs in the community, and outreach events like Cops for Kids Day, held every year, except this one, with the Boys and Girls Club and the Charlottesville Night Out, which celebrates police and community. To clarify, we are an independent 501c3 nonprofit. And while we partner with the Charlottesville Police Department, we do not report to the CPD or the City Council or any part of the city government. We are not a police union, nor do we do the work commonly associated with police unions. And to the extent that we advocate for the CPD, it is to improve the quality of policing as a community service. I make this note because during the summer, we learned that there are several persisting misperceptions of who we are and what we do, and we like to clarify these when presented the opportunity. Now I'd like to introduce our presenter. Detective David Stutzman joined the CPD in 2013 as a patrol officer. He spent 4 years on patrol, working evening shift and day shift. On patrol, he held the positions of field training officer and evidence technician. He transferred to the Investigations Bureau in 2017 and was assigned to financial crimes. As a financial crimes investigator, Detective Stutzman directly recovered over $125,000 for fraud victims. In 2019, Detective Stutzman was assigned to digital forensics and is currently the primary digital forensic examiner for the police department. In addition to investigating cases, His responsibilities include analysis of phones and computers for evidence and training new detectives. A note for you, you can add questions to the question section on your screen, but we'll hold your questions until the end of the presentation. Detective Stutzman, thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you, Gail. And thank you very much for all the work you do with the foundation. It's really greatly appreciated. So I'm going to go ahead and go through my presentation here. I'm basically going to be talking a little bit about the police department, how we investigate things, and then I'm going to walk through a case that I investigated a couple years ago, and just kind of go through the steps that we took for that case. So just a little bit about the department. We are the primary law enforcement agency for the city. We have about 125 sworn officers and roughly 30 civilian employees. Our civilian employees are community service officers who handle parking and some traffic enforcement. We have our services unit who handles records management, and we have some other civilian employees who manage property and evidence that we see and things along those lines. And we're the primary agency, which means if you call 911 and ask for the police in Charlottesville, we are going to be the ones who show up. We serve a population of about 48,000, but we tend to be busier than an average city of that size because there are a lot of people who commute into Charlottesville during the day, and there's a high student population, of course, from UEA. So we tend to respond to a higher number of calls than would be average for a city of our size. And here's just some statistics about the volume of things we respond to from 2019. We had about 38,000 calls for service generated. These are anytime an officer responds to a call or makes a traffic stop or a victim calls in to report a crime. There happened 38,000 times in 2019. We took about 5,000 police reports, and we made about 1,900 arrests in that year. Just a little bit about me. As Gail already mentioned this a little bit, but yeah, I've been working for the department for 8 years, and I have spent 4 years on patrol and have just about 4 years as a detective now. My current assignment is digital forensics, which is essentially processing mostly phones that we seize for evidence. We get a lot of valuable evidence in the cases we investigate from cell phones. And previously I worked financial crimes as well. A little bit about the General Investigations Bureau, which is the unit that I work in. We are responsible for investigation of all of the major crimes that occur in Charlottesville, which include aggravated assaults, burglaries, high value fraud and theft, murder, missing persons, sex offenses, and suspicious deaths. And there are frequently other things that we have to investigate as well, but these are kind of the standard list of things that are pretty much always going to be investigated by the investigations unit. The unit is organized into a few different specialized units based on the types of cases that these detectives are assigned to investigate. We have the property and fraud unit, the special victims unit, which is for investigations of sex crimes and cases involving children. And we have the major cases unit, which is essentially violent crimes. And we have the forensics unit, which is more specialized technical processing of crime scenes and collecting of evidence. And although we are divided into these units, the way it works is sometimes we get busy. For example, in this past month, we've been very busy with violent crimes, and any detective can be assigned to work one of those types of cases when it's needed based on staffing. And this is just the list of the level of staffing that we have in the unit. We have a captain who is in charge overall of the unit, and under him is the lieutenant and 3 sergeants. We have 11 detectives, 1 crime analyst, and we have 2 forensic support specialists who are some of those civilian employees that I mentioned earlier who are responsible for handling evidence and property that we seize during the investigation. A little bit about the investigative process and how we respond to cases. For the most part, whenever somebody initially calls the police to make a report, they're going to be speaking to a patrol officer. And that initial report is usually going to be taken by the patrol bureau. So this can be officers responding to an active scene, something that has just occurred, or it can be a victim who is called in to report a crime that happened in the past days or months or longer ago. That initial step is always going to be by the patrol bureau. When a serious offense is reported to us, for example, a shooting or stabbing or something along that, a supervisor on the patrol bureau is able to call detectives to respond to assist with investigations. And we can be called out at any time. We always have at least 2 detectives and a supervisor on call who will be called in for serious offenses that just happened. So there have been many times where I've been called in 2, 3 in the morning and need to get up to respond because something's just happened. We're always available for that. When the report is taken, some cases do stay assigned to patrol. Not every report that we take is assigned to investigations. We simply don't have the number of detectives that would be required to investigate every single report that comes into us. So most cases where an officer makes an arrest on the same day, for example, an officer responded to an active scene and identified a suspect and they made an arrest. Unless it's a especially serious case, then that is going to stay, that case is going to stay assigned to that patrol officer. It's not going to be assigned to investigations. So for example, when I was a patrol officer, I responded to a case in which 2 people had been stabbed, and we located the offender on scene and were able to make an arrest. And generally, if he had not been arrested, that's something that would be assigned to investigations, but because I was able to arrest him at that time, it stayed assigned to me and did not go to investigations. And in addition to that, low-level cases, vandalism, shoplifting, minor assaults, those are going to stay assigned to a patrol officer as well. So every morning, our investigation supervisors, this is going to be our sergeants, they review the reports that have come in the previous day, and they look to see what needs to be assigned to a detective to investigate. And then the detective begins the investigation. These are some of the things that they will take to investigate the cases. For example, they're going to recheck the crime scene. Say, for example, we had a shooting, a detective is going to go out. They're going to look for evidence that could have been missed at the crime scene. They're going to knock on doors, attempt to speak to potential witnesses. They're going to look for security video in the area. The detective is going to speak to the people involved. They're going to interview, re-interview any victims or witnesses that we have. They're going to attempt to interview suspects. For some cases, if it's a repeat kind of offense that we don't necessarily have a suspect identified, they're going to be looking back at previous cases to attempt to identify similarities, look for what's called a modus operandi or an MO, to look for similarities to attempt to identify a suspect that way. And one of our big jobs is going to be writing and executing search warrants, which is one of the main skills that we have as investigators. Okay, so now I'm going to go into talking about this case that I investigated. I just want to put this warning in. There's nothing particularly graphic or anything in this, but just the idea of this could be disturbing to some people. So I just want to point out that the remainder of this presentation discusses an investigation of an online threat of a racist school shooting. That threat was determined to be a hoax. It's possible you could find this disturbing. Any identifying information for people involved has been removed. So this occurred on March 20th of 2019. It was late in the afternoon. It was about 4 or 5 p.m. When I was notified about it. A online threat had been posted on the website 4chan.org, which was to commit a school shooting targeting minorities at Charlottesville High School. Because of this, schools were forced to close. You know, in addition to making people feel very unsafe, it created certainly a huge childcare issue that parents had to scramble to find childcare and deal with their work situation for a couple of days after this threat was posted. So it definitely created a big issue for people in Charlottesville. After we notified about it, we opened an investigation, and we also got assistance from the FBI and Virginia State Police with the investigation. So I'm going to show you the actual image that was posted of this threat now. This is the image that was posted on 4chan. It says, "I'm going to do an ethnic cleansing in my school tomorrow. I will kill." These are a couple of racial slurs. "My school is crawling with them. If you're white and from Charlottesville High School, you better stay home." And this particular threat was a lot more specific than a lot of the types of threats that we investigate. Generally, when something like this is reported to us, it's very vague. It's not necessarily specifically Charlottesville High School. It's not nearly as specific as this one. So this was a lot more concerning to us than this one appeared to be more credible, I should say, than sometimes when we receive cases like this. So we started the investigation, and it was assigned to me because I had some technical skills that we were able to use in this investigation. So the law allows us as law enforcement to request information related to online accounts in emergency situations. Generally, we need to obtain some sort of legal process. We need to obtain a search warrant or a subpoena or a court order in order to get any information about an online account. However, in a situation like this, when there's an immediate threat of violence, we can request that information from an internet company, and they can voluntarily turn it over to us. So that's what we did in this case. I contacted 4chan and requested information, and they were able to provide me with an IP address that the post was made from. And this is an IP address and also the time that it was posted. And it's always important for us to be able to identify the time, because an IP address can change every few hours. An IP address can change. Sometimes they last longer, but they were able to provide me with the IP address and the time, which is what we needed to begin the investigation. I was able to search this IP address and determine the company that owned it. And what I had to do at that point was reach out to that company and request further information from them based on the situation. And this led me through a series of different companies who were all sort of leasing the IP address to the next company, which is common in cases like this. One company owns the IP address. They're leasing it to another company who leases it to another company who leases it to another company, and so on, until you finally are able to identify the actual person providing the service to the customer. So eventually I was able to track down this IP address as being used by a VPN company in Hong Kong. And if you're not familiar with a VPN, it's a service that can be used to hide your IP address. And they also provide other services like encryption and security and things like that. But I was able to get in touch with the VPN company probably about 11 p.m. or midnight that night, and I was on the phone with them off and on for several hours, trying to get information from them. And they were very helpful and very willing to cooperate, which was really essential to being able to solve this case. when I finally got in touch with them, they were able to provide me with information. So these are some of the things that a VPN company provided to me. They were able to look at the approximate time of their VPN service and see the locations where their service had been accessed, and one of those had been accessed in Charlottesville. And when I asked them for more information about that, they were able to provide me with some device identifying information. They were able to see that there was a Samsung Galaxy S8 phone that had been accessing the VPN in Charlottesville. And they were also able to provide me with some other information, which ultimately we were able to use to identify the suspect. And we were able to identify some social media accounts that were belonging to the suspect. So it took us, we obtained the information from the VPN company, and it took somewhere around 20 hours in order for us to figure out how to apply this information and in order to get it to the right places to identify the suspect. At the time, I think this was maybe the first time this particular type of data had been used to identify a suspect. So it took us a while to figure out how to work with it. So during that time, we were pursuing other leads on the case. We spoke to officials with the school system, asked them about any potential suspects they might have had. They gave us information about students who had missed school that day and that the threat was posted and things like that. We went out and conducted interviews based on information that they provided us. None of those turned out to be the correct individual, but just another way that we were working to try to investigate this case during the time. And we also put out media releases and requests for information through the local news, which is something that a lot of times it can be very successful for us. It wasn't in this case, but there have been many cases where we've been able to identify suspects by putting information out through the media. So that's a huge asset for us. So eventually, like I said, we were able to identify social media accounts, and then we were able to contact those social media companies and again request emergency information about the accounts that we identified for the suspect. So we were able to get a Gmail account and a phone number for our suspect. And then when we contacted the phone company, they were able to provide us with the suspect's home address. So it was about 11 p.m. the following day. We identified the suspect as a 17-year-old juvenile who lived in Albemarle County. So at the time, I had been working, I probably slept about 3 or 4 hours that night, and I had pretty much been working on it nonstop. But then 11 p.m., have to go right back in to work to work on the case now that we've got our suspect identified. So about 11 p.m. or midnight, I went back into the office, and we began to work on a search warrant for the suspect's house. I was the one writing the search warrant, and there was another detective who was working on an operational plan. We have certain steps that we take, plans we create every time we are going to be conducting a search warrant on a house. So we divided up the work in order to get everything done that we needed to get done. I was able to obtain a search warrant. We go to the Charlottesville Albemarle Magistrate's Office generally for search warrants. And I obtained a search warrant for electronic devices, for firearms and ammunition, and any items that were evidence of racist beliefs or affiliation with racist groups. And early that morning, it was about 5:30 or 6 in the morning, we did execute the search warrant on the suspect's house, and we got assistance with Albemarle County Police, and I should say also from the FBI with our search of the house. So at this point, this is where everything begins to come together in the case. I was the first one into the door. The suspect is the one who answered the door, and he was holding a Samsung Galaxy S8, which is the phone that we identified with the VPN company. We arrested him and seized the phone. This is his phone right here. We then conducted a further search of the house. We also seized a laptop, a PlayStation, and SIM cards, which are all items that could be seized under the search warrant. It's important, we did not locate any kind of firearms or any kind of racist items, anything that would indicate this was actually a planned attack. And then we interviewed the suspect, and because he was a juvenile, we interviewed him with his parents there. They all consented to speaking to us. And he admitted to having made the 4chan post and having done it as a hoax. So now that the items were seized, the phone in particular, they're taken back to our technical unit, which at the time I was not a part of, but now I am. There were searches done of these devices. They have to be done in a forensically sound manner, so we make sure that the evidence is correctly preserved. And here are some of the things that we located on the suspect's cell phone. So we found the image that was used in the 4chan post. We found the particular VPN app that the post was made from. We found web history from the site 4chan. And we found that he had been searching and reading news articles related to the school threat. And these are some of the funnier ones that I always like to find whenever we're investigating a crime. We found that he had done Google searches about the consequences of having made an online threat and had Google searches about whether the police can track 4chan posts and VPNs. So we took him into custody that day and charged him with threats of death or bodily injury to persons and school property, and also harassment by computer. He pled guilty, and we were able to make that arrest within under 40 hours of that threat having been made, which I think was a good resolution to this case. I think it made the community feel safer that we were able to make an arrest in this case. And that is pretty much it. So I guess, Gail, we'll open it up to any questions at this point.
Thank you. That is really interesting and very disturbing. I'm going to ask the first question. What he was charged with, was that a felony, I assume?
Yeah, there were two charges there. The first one was a felony, and the second one was a misdemeanor. The threats on school property is a felony, and harassment by computer is a misdemeanor.
Okay, thank you. So the first question is asking if you could elaborate on additional training or experience which separates detectives from patrol officers.
Yeah, so there isn't any specific training to being a detective, but a lot of that comes down to getting experience as a patrol officer. Like I said, there are cases that a patrol officer initially takes the report for, and they may be assigned to continue to investigate that. So there are some officers who are, will be looking to take the extra steps to become a detective. They're going to be looking to work harder on their investigations. They're going to be writing their own search warrants, things like that. They're trying to get experience. So it's about experience that you get in patrol. We have an interview process to become a detective. You have to apply for the position and interview for it. And so then once you're selected to become a detective, there are opportunities for additional training. We have, most detectives are going to go to an interview training for conducting interviews with people. And then there are specialty trainings related to the particular types of crimes that you might be assigned to, especially the special victims detectives. They receive a lot of special training. And also in my position, doing technical stuff, there's training related to that. So it's kind of the overall situation, the experience that you're able to get in patrol, the initiative you show as a patrol officer, and then the department provides you training as you move along in that career.
Thank you. So the next question is, does Charlottesville Police Department have the technical equipment it needs to do the forensics search of phones, or does it need to be outsourced?
We do most of it in-house. There are certain things that we don't have the capabilities for. For example, they're on some older cell phones. You can do what's called a chip off, which is where you desolder the memory chip from the phone, and you can analyze that directly. We don't have the capability to do that. It's not really a thing very much anymore because most devices are encrypted and it doesn't work. But there might be another phone we've run into that can be accessed, but we just don't have the ability to do it. And we can send stuff to the Virginia Department of Forensic Science, and they are able to process some of those things for us. But for the most part, we do it in-house, yeah.
Great, thank you. The next question, what would you have done if the company in Hong Kong had not cooperated with you?
That's a good question, and I'm glad that they did cooperate with us, because we don't have any way of forcing them to cooperate, being in another country. If it was an American company, then we can get legal orders that will force them to provide us information. And although when we have to go through that process, it is definitely slower. We have to write up the order. We have to go before a judge or a magistrate, and then we have to send it to the company. So that kind of process can take days or weeks or months sometimes. So we are fortunate that the company in Hong Kong cooperated with us. But being able to speak to people who are in those positions that you need assistance from, and explain to them that this is an emergency, really does go a long way in terms of getting cooperation. Just being able to explain the situation, a lot of times we can get cooperation from the people we need cooperation from.
Thank you.
And I guess I should say, so we would have also continued definitely pursuing those other routes of investigation, obtaining more information from the school systems, further releases through the media. A lot of times we'll have people call in through Crime Stoppers to provide information if they might suspect somebody being involved in crime. So there are other avenues we would continue to pursue, but we were fortunate that this one did work out for us.
You were. Thank you. Next question, if the city had more funds or the foundation could raise more money, what would you initially feel should be funded to add support your department?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm biased because I do the technical stuff. I would love to have some more equipment, some more resources for processing phones. But there are certainly a lot of worthwhile things that the department could be spending money on. There are a lot of training. There's definitely training that officers and detectives could be going to. So I'm sure that if you ask everybody at the police department, you get 125 different answers. What we should be spending money on.
Well, in your mind, what's your top of mind training? Just yours personally and professionally.
For me personally, it would be training related to technical investigations. There's a lot of training you can get for computer forensics, their certifications. That would be something that I would be looking for. But like I said, everybody could use additional training here for sure.
Yes. And we try to help with that every day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Another question, do you have any general advice for how we can best help an investigation if we end up a victim or witness to a crime, especially related to electronic evidence or records?
Well, the important thing in terms of being a victim, or especially a witness, is to make sure you contact us. Sometimes we encounter people who they may have witnessed a crime, but we didn't know to reach out to them. And we might have encountered them later, but they said, oh, the police never talked to me, so I thought it didn't matter. But if you're the witness, make sure we know that you're a witness and reach out to us. Give us a call and let us know that you have some information for us. And it's really important for victims to stay in contact. I know it can definitely be difficult for victims when, a lot of times they kind of want to move on past the situation. They kind of want to forget about it. But it's important for them to stay in contact with the detective who's working the case or the officer who's working the case. Because there's going to be follow-ups. Investigations can take a long period of time. So staying in contact is definitely important. And in terms of electronic evidence, it's important to make sure you don't delete anything for sure. It's important that if you have electronic evidence, you tell us about it. Sometimes companies they have certain retention periods for evidence or, for their records. And for some phone or internet companies, that evidence, those records might be gone after a week or two. And if we don't know about it in that time, then we're not going to be able to get that and see what that evidence is. So it's important to let us know about any possible types of electronic evidence that you think might be important.
Great, thank you. Next question, what was the suspect's sentence?
I am not actually able to say that because he was a juvenile. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. And what level of cooperation do you normally get from social media companies in cases like this?
In a case like this, they're usually very cooperative. If we tell them this is a school shooting threat, they are definitely going to assist us. I've never encountered anything like this where they refuse to assist us. In terms of investigations where it's not an emergency, they can be more difficult for sure. I used to work financial crimes, and when you're investigating a fraud or an embezzlement that happened a year ago, there's really no emergency whatsoever, and they will definitely take their time when they're responding to your search warrant. I've had companies take 6 months to send me the records that I got in a search warrant. So that for sure can be frustrating. But in any time where we can tell them this is an emergency and these are the facts that make it an emergency, they're basically always going to help us out.
Thanks. Next question, what has been your most rewarding experience with CPD?
Okay, yeah. There's a lot of different rewarding ones. Just a couple weeks ago, we were able to track down a murder fugitive, which, that's definitely a rewarding thing to be able to do. But what's coming to mind probably most of all is a fraud case that I worked in, which a person who worked for a mental health organization and was responsible for assisting people who were mentally handicapped had stolen money from the people she was assisting, and somewhere around $25,000 or $30,000. And I was able to investigate that, and we were able to make an arrest, get restitution for those people. So it's definitely was very rewarding to be able to help out people who were in need, who were victims of a pretty serious crime.
Yeah, I bet. Thank you. Next question, how have community relations helped or hurt your investigative process?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
How have community relations, I assume the intention of this question is current community relations, helped or hurt your investigative process?
I would say overall, we haven't been really affected in a significantly negative way. I think a lot of people understand that, you know, for example, if we're investigating a murder, that we're investigating a murder, and they're not going to refuse to help us because of whatever might be in the news at the time. You know, of course, earlier in the year, we had some protests that, you know, they came and they shut down intersections and roads and things like that. And, but, you know, I mean, I have to say, like, it was an inconvenience, but there were never any major issues coming from those other than some like real minor vandalism. So, I mean, overall, I would say our investigations haven't really been hurt in any way. And, you know, we're still able to talk to people and get cooperation when we need it.
Good. I have one more question for you. Did the suspect have any relationship to Charlottesville High School, or did he have any real motive for the threat that you concluded?
No. I mean, his motive was just to mess with people, essentially. And yeah, he was an Albemarle High School student, or I don't remember which particular. He was a high school student in Albemarle County. I don't remember if he went to Albemarle High School or what, but no, he didn't have any specific connection to Charlottesville. He just decided to pick Charlottesville, I guess, because it wasn't his own school. Yeah, that's about it. He was just trying to cause trouble, essentially.
Yeah, well, it sounds like he caused a lot of it. Thank you very much. I wanted, since we have a few more minutes, and since we don't ever hear enough about some of the Officers of the Month's examples of the great work that happens in CPD, I wanted to share just quickly a couple of recent stories of officers who are receiving these awards. So the first is Officers Ryan Blackwell, Frank Harris, and Brian Green were nominated by Sergeants Woodsell and Hudson. Earlier this year, Officers Ryan Blackwell, Frank Harris, and Brian Green were investigating a domestic assault on Langford Avenue when they heard numerous shots fired in the area of 912 South First Street. While the average citizen would run from these situations, all three officers, without hesitation, ran in the direction of the gunshots. While approaching the area, the officers heard bullets flying by their heads and hitting a number of vehicles parked behind them. For their safety, the officers took a position to cover to assess the situation. They observed a male with a gun in his hand who was obviously involved in a shootout. They used verbal commands from their position of cover and then safely approached the male, taking him into custody and seizing his firearm. Once in custody, they observed a bullet wound to his arm and immediately started to render first aid. Woodsell and Hudson emphasized the officers' use of teamwork, communication, use of cover, safe approach of a suspect with a firearm, and the transition to care of the injured male. Sergeants also recognized Ryan Blackwell's leadership, while Harris and Green did an outstanding job. Blackwell is a veteran officer, and his direction in a dangerous situation were key to the safety of all involved. And that's a wonderful story. The last one I will share is Officers James Burnett and Grant Davis, also nominated by Sergeant Hudson. Earlier this year, they responded to the scene of a stabbing. Arriving before rescue personnel, they discovered the victim unconscious and bleeding from severe stab wounds. They both began immediate life-saving efforts, including the use of pressure on the wounds and connection of an AED. The officers continued their life-saving efforts until rescue personnel arrived. They then assisted with the transport, with Davis riding along to the hospital. Family members of the victim were also present, and both officers were able to comfort in their time of need. The victim in this case passed away a short time later, despite the efforts of all those involved. She had dealt with a number of traumatic situations in her own life recently and was a hero in her own regard. This only increased the emotionality of this call for all those involved, particularly our officers who fought so hard to save her life. These types of incidents can have lasting effects on first responders. Both officers performed admirably, and for that they are to be commended. And I can't emphasize how many stories we see and how many awards are given to Officers of the Month at Charlottesville Police Department, and they're just not made public enough. So I wanted to take the opportunity to share just a couple. If there are no more questions, we will end. Our sincere thanks to Detective David Stutzman for such a great presentation, and to the Charlottesville Police Department for their partnership in this program. The next Lunch and Learn presentation will be on the canine operation and is scheduled for Wednesday, January 13th at noon. We hope to see you there. In the meantime, we wish you a safe, healthy, happy, and peaceful holiday season. Thanks for coming.